On November 21st, 1989, what I think is a remarkable album was released by Quincy Jones called Back on the Block. I had the absolute honor, and I mean that, honor of working with Quincy on several projects, including Back on the Block, where I was credited as technical director and I got some engineering credits. And it was just an amazing moment in time. It was about a year that we worked on this project, actually just over a year. The stories, the backstories, the personalities, there's no way I could pack this all into a 30-minute, 75-minute, or even a 6-hour podcast. But I want to kind of give you an overview. We lost Quincy this past week at the ripe old age of 91. Cheers, Quincy, to a life well lived. Talk about a musical volcano, firestorm. Quincy Jones was one of a kind. And I'm going to do the best I can to just share a few memories and some insights from this project. So I've got my virtual Florida fireplace going here. So I hope you'll settle in, and we're just gonna go track by track. There's no script. I'm just gonna kind of shoot from the hip, share some stories and insights about this amazing record called Back on the Block. So pull up a chair and let's hang out in the studio just for a little while. So my name is Brad Sundberg. I worked in the music industry. I worked in Hollywood, we'll even say, for about 24 years. Sometimes it kind of blows my mind, but worked on some amazing albums, worked in some amazing homes. Quincy holds two of those key spots. Quincy was really my biggest installation client. We're not really going to talk about that on this chat, but Quincy built a remarkable 20,000 square foot home at the top of Bel Air. And I've written about it a little bit on social media, but it's his home. So I do respect privacy. But Quincy trusted me to put music, theater, all just some beautiful stuff, TVs popping out of furniture and things like that, all through that house. And that all happened, believe it or not, over 9/11. We were actually working at Quincy's house, and I'm going to get back to the album in just a second. But I spent so much time with Quincy that I just want to give you as much of a taste as I can. And after 9/11, there's a photo, and I wish I had a copy of it. Quincy had it in his house. But a bunch of us that worked on the house, a bunch of the contractors, those of you that are old enough to remember 9/11, the country came to a stop. And the country was very united and patriotic. And it was a very interesting time in the United States. And they got this giant flag. I don't know where they got it, this huge American flag, and draped it over on Quincy's roof. It was still a plywood roof. It was still under construction. And they brought everybody that was working on the house in for a beautiful photo. And I haven't seen that photo in years. And I would love to see that photo again, because I was there with my crew. And it was just a moment in time, and it was very powerful and very patriotic. But that was in 2001. I think we worked on that house from 1999 to about 2002. It was a mammoth project, and Quincy introduced me to a lot of people through that project, Will Smith and Elon Musk and different people. So Quincy was a citizen of the world. Quincy knew everyone. And you know what's interesting about people like him and Michael Jackson and people that kind of run at that level is how they remember all the names and the nicknames and the backstories. As this isn't to sound boastful in the least, but even my wife, Debbie would come to the studio quite a bit, and Quincy would always remember her name, and he would ask about her. And I always thought, how in the world do you remember all those names? I mean, studio people, contractors, Hollywood history. I mean, he knew everybody. So I don't want to get too bogged down with that. But over the past week, the morning that Quincy passed away, I drove to work and I loaded up Back on the Block on my Spotify. And I just kind of listened to it throughout the day. And so, like I said before, there is no script. I don't have a bunch of notes here. I have my phone, and I'm just being honest. I'm literally, I've got Wikipedia just so I can have a couple dates in front of me. But outside of that, we're just going to chat. And I want to talk to you a little bit about this amazing record released November 21st, 1989. So let me tell you what was happening before that time. I met Quincy. It was probably in 1985, 85 or 86. I have it right over there, when he was working on a project called The Color Purple. And he was I believe he produced the music. Steven Spielberg, of course, produced the film. And Quincy was recording it over at Westlake Studios. And I was a runner. I was making coffee and with my eyes wide open that Mr. Quincy Jones is in the building. And he was just this kind, very driven, but friendly, funny man. And you were drawn to him. He was like a magnet. You wanted to be around him. And the ideas and the sayings, the Quincy-isms, were just amazing. And he and Bruce Swedien were nearly inseparable. And Rod Temperton, I believe, was a big part of that project. And that's when we first met. I don't think I made a big lasting impact on him, but over time, I got to meet Michael doing Captain EO, and then everything kind of came together where Quincy was going to start working with Michael on the Bad album, or what would soon be called the Bad album. And by then I had a good friendship with Bruce and Michael, and Quincy already knew me, and Rod knew me. So I was invited in, and I was invited into Westlake Studio D to watch that album be recorded. I was working on other projects. I was working with people like Stevie Nicks and Taco Bell, and a bunch of other, just Westlake was just a machine of music at that time. But during the Bad album, 1986, 1987, that's when we were just cranking on Michael's stuff. And that's when I really kind of gelled with the team. And I wound up spending a lot of time with them after that. So I've got so many tapes and things that I've been finding. After Michael's album, after the Bad album came out, Bruce and I stayed in the studio on and off for another year. We were doing dance mixes. We were doing Moonwalker. We were doing the videos, The Way You Make Me Feel, and Smooth Criminal, and Bad, and Mirror, and one after another. And then the tour. I did all the tour prep, getting the guys ready to go on the tour, working with Michael and the choreographers. So there's a period of like 3 years that it's just like a blur. It was so much work and so much fun, and it was exhausting and exhilarating, and I was thrown into the deep water. There was no I don't want to say there was no mistakes, but you had to rise to the occasion, and it wasn't just like you're working on one song. It was just this, then this, then this. And so kind of in the midst of all that, in July of 1988, it's so funny that I found this tape. I got tossed onto a Barbra Streisand project called Till I Loved You. And Barbara came into the studio. Funny backstory, but this is when she was dating Don Johnson of Miami Vice. And I crossed paths with Don years later, and it's not a very pleasant story. I may or may not tell it. But Don and Barbara were working. They did at least two songs at Westlake. One of them was with Phil Ramone, and I think that was Till I Loved You. And another one was with Quincy Jones, a song called Places You Find Love. And I'm going to double check this, but I believe Places You Find Love, it was written by Glenn Ballard and Cliff Magnus. And you kind of remember those names because they're going to reappear again later on songs like Man in the Mirror and Keep the Faith with Michael Jackson. So stay with me. In July of 1988, we recorded Places You Find Love for Barbra Streisand. And it was nice. I liked the song. It was just kind of, well, fast forward, literally, I'd forgotten this till I found this tape. 1 month later, I think we finished with Barbara, got the record done, and a month later we started working on Quincy's project. And what does he start with but Places You Find Love in August of 88. So July of 88, we're working on Barbara's version. A month later, we're working on Quincy's version. So I don't want to tell the story out of order. It's just that I find it interesting. From time to time, I can't play music on my podcast because you just can't. So from time to time, I might tell you to, just switch over to Spotify for a second. But this would be a good time. Switch over to Spotify just for a second and listen to The Places You Find Love by Barbra Streisand. You don't have to listen to the whole thing, but listen to a few bars of it, skip into the chorus. And it's Barbara. It's very, Broadway, Barbara, the tempo of it, everything about it's very Streisand. It's kind of Streisand meets Quincy. So I'm going to take a sip of my cognac here. Take a few seconds and listen to Barbra Streisand, Places You Find Love. Okay, now, I'm going to have you do the same thing right now. Jump ahead to Quincy Jones, Places You Find Love, which we literally recorded a month later. Listen to the differences. Now we've got Saida Garrett singing. Saida is very new on the scene. This is maybe the first time I met Saida. And then she became songwriting partners with Glenn Ballard for Man in the Mirror and Keep the Faith for Michael Jackson. But I think this was really the first time that I probably met Saida. No, I take it back. I knew her from down the hall working on jingles, commercials. So she might be down the hall singing for Levi's or Taco Bell or somebody. So we already kind of knew her at Westlake, and I believe she was signed with Quest Records. I have no notes here, but just go with me. And so then she came in and did Quincy's version of Places You Find Love. Now, I'm not going to do this all day, but I'm going to take one more little sip of cognac, pause the podcast, jump over to Spotify, and listen to Quincy's version of Places You Find Love. And it's kind of a not fair fight between Quincy Jones and Barbra Streisand, even though he produced both versions. Go ahead. Okay, if you took my advice, maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. If you're a big Streisand fan, that's cool. But Quincy's version blew the doors off. He really gave that song the full Quincy Jones, Bruce Swedien treatment. The mix is remarkable. When I teach in music schools and recording schools, I'll tell people, go get back on the block, hole away somewhere for about 3 days, and just listen to this album. Study it. Listen to it. Go through it track by track. The mixes are remarkable. The musicianship. Well, let's get started. So let's jump into this thing. I'm not trying to show off. Maybe I am. But I've got my original Back on the Block booklet that was actually signed by Quincy. I don't know if you can see that or not. Maybe Maddie will drop a close-up of it in here. Oh, it says to Braddy Daddy, with love, respect, and warm friendship, thanks for everything, Quincy, 12 of 89, with a nice little heart next to his name. Such a sweet man. Quincy was funny, man. He was, he loved food. He loved food. He loved music. He loved travel. He loved women. He loved good wine. He truly was a citizen of the world. And to me, it's just such an important album. Quincy he'd been working on producing so many albums over the years that it was finally time for him to do his own. So that's when Back on the Block came together. I was 26. Yeah, like 26. And I'm a white kid from Santa Cruz, California. I have not really been exposed to real jazz. And all of a sudden, I'm encountering people like Miles Davis and Ray Charles, Joe Zawinul, and on, day after day after day. It was a remarkable project. So let's dive into this thing. I'm probably going to do it over and over again. You kind of have two choices. You can either pause the podcast right now and listen to the whole album, or we'll just kind of go through it together. But you really do have to kind of zero in on some of these songs to appreciate what's going on. It starts out with the prologue, which is 2Q's rap, because it was Quincy and his son Snoopy, not Snoop Dogg, but Snoopy, and so they kind of do the rap together. Now again, this is 1988 that we started this project, 88 into 89. And believe it or not, rap was still pretty new. It was not nearly as mainstream. It was a fairly new thing. So they just opened the whole album up with the two of them doing kind of this fun father-son rap, and it's really sweet. So it doesn't last very long. I don't know, it's a minute, something like that. But then you jump into Back on the Block, which is, again, I could spend so much time. The prologue is a minute, 4 seconds. Then we jump into the first kind of big heavyweight song called Back on the Block. It was written by Quincy Jones, QD3, that's Quincy's son, Rod Temperton, and Bill Summers. So this was, you have to try and remember, or you have to try and wrap your head around this. This is before Pro Tools. This was recorded on tape. And most of the song, I believe, was recorded on MPC 60, or at least the rhythm, the drums. It was Bruce Swedien. Bruce provided the drum sounds. And I believe it was Michael Prince, if I'm not mistaken, who kind of did a lot of the sequencing, getting... I know Michael Boddicker was heavily involved, and just piecing it all together. It's a very complicated rhythm pattern. There's the driving rhythm through the whole song, and then under each rapper, we came up with our own kind of groove to separate one from another. But it all has to stay the same tempo. And it's all on tape. There's no Pro Tools. There's no hard drives. It's tape. So what Quincy did was he had the four rappers, Ice-T, Melly Mel, Kool Moe Dee, and Big Daddy Kane. And again, I'm new. I don't know this world. I think I knew Ice-T. And forgive me, I don't remember what a couple of his early songs were, but he was kind of becoming a household name. So he was kind of the most known of the four. The other three, I didn't know who they were. What Quincy did was he told all four guys, go ahead and write me a rap. And I wasn't, I don't know when he gave the instructions, but the instructions were come in with 16 bars on this tempo. And we're going to do your 16 bars, one after another, after another, after another. And then Tevin Campbell, very, very young Tevin Campbell from Texas. This was the first time, I think it was the first time he'd ever been out of Texas. He was just a kid. His mom was there. And Tevin was going to, sing the whole Stokey. So right off the bat, and I actually have a lot of the raw tracks of the guys doing their raps and freestyling and everything. But it was supposed to be 16 bars. I don't know who went first because it really didn't matter because we were going to piece it all together anyway. But Kool Moe Dee bang, 16 bars. Melly Mel, bang, 16 bars. Big Daddy Kane, bang, 16 bars. And if I'm not a musician, I'm an engineer, but I have a firm understanding of music. Most pop music is kind of 8-bar phrases, and so with 16 bars, you've got enough for like a verse and a B section, depending on how you break it up. Ice-T comes up, he gets to 16 bars, and he just keeps going, and then he blows past 24 bars, and he gets to 28 bars. His rap is 28 bars, which musically doesn't really work when you've got 3/16s. If you had 3/16s and a 32, it might make sense. If you had 3/16s and a 24, it might make sense. But he did a 28. So I remember Quincy and Bruce saying something in the control room like, it's Ice-T, we can't tell him to change it. The rap is fantastic. So we kept it at 28 bars, and Quincy made it the first rap, and Bruce, we had to restructure the whole rhythm section and stretch it out to 24 bars to fit. And I'm sorry, 28 bars, and it works. It actually works. So the song opens up with Ice-T doing a 28-bar rap that somehow works. And he actually got Quincy's assistant, Kamiko. He dropped her name into the rap, which I thought was really cool. Kamiko sent Ice the beat. And it was just cool. No pun intended. But then after Ice-T is Melly Mel, and then Cool Mo D, and then Big Daddy Kane. And you learn their personalities from the 4 raps. And it was the coolest experience. Now, I didn't just fall off the turnip truck, and I'm going to be careful how I tell this little story. At that point in my life, I'm a very skinny, very white kid, white bread, Wonder Bread, white kid from Santa Cruz. And there's 4 rappers that are in the kitchen, and they're just cool. And they've got the handshakes and the slang and the isms and the profanity and everything else. And you almost have a choice, and they were super friendly. They were really nice to me, but you don't want to pretend you fit into the group, because you don't. And so and it's funny. I mean, I literally had that thought. It's like, I can't come in and start, trying to act like some cool black guy, because it's not going to work. And I didn't, and I wouldn't have. It was just wonderful to be around them and just kind of watch them, learn from them, chat with them. Really, really fun memories. So then there's Tevin. Tevin comes in, and this didn't all happen on the same day. The rappers did. The 4 rappers were there the same day. But Tevin came in at some point, and he was so sweet and just a nice, polite kid. And I can only imagine how nervous he was. And he went out and just killed it. And Quincy was on his feet cheering him on. And we all were. You're watching a young star just blossom right in the studio. So that's the opening song. So you've got 6.5 minutes of Quincy kind of introducing this whole new phase of his life. So then we jump into I Don't Go For That. Saida Garrett. I love Saida. I haven't talked to Saida now in a couple of years, but just a sweet, wonderful powerhouse of a talent. And I think Quincy was almost building a diving board, kind of like in the best possible way. Like I think a launching pad is probably a better description. He had Ian Prince wrote and did the rhythm on the song I Don't Go For That. And Saida just killed it. It was a fun, poppy. Again, go ahead and pause. Just listen to Saida, cut 3 I don't go for that. It's just a fun pop song. Okay. Now, it does have kind of some 80s drum sounds, guilty as charged, but the arrangement of it, the way that Saida just owned that song, 2 thumbs up. Really, really enjoyed working on that song. Okay, I'll Be Good to You. Now we're going to start getting serious. I'll Be Good to You, written by the brothers Johnson, George and Lewis. And there's another credit here for Sonora Sam. And forgive me, Sonora Sam, I don't know who that is. It's a song that Quincy really loved. And it's not my favorite song, but hear me out. When Ray Charles came in, I mean, number one, you've got Ray Charles and Shaka Khan. So just pause me. I'm not that important. Listen to I'll Be Good to You with Ray and Shaka. So you've got these two just amazing singers. When Ray started ad-libbing it towards the end of the song, take my credit cards, Visa, MasterCharge, American Express, turn the pants upside down. And I think what he was thinking was turn my pockets inside out, but the way it came out was, turn the pants upside down. And Quincy honestly fell out of his chair. He laughed so hard and ran out and gave Ray a hug. And it was magic. I mean, here's 27-year-old me, whatever I was, 26, in the presence of Ray Charles. And this grand old man that was part of my childhood. Everybody knew Ray Charles. And here he was in the flesh and just singing and entertaining, telling jokes, just dominant, owning the room. He owns the room when he comes in. I also had a really interesting chat with his assistant, an older black man, and forgive me, I don't remember his name. And because Ray was there like all day or much of the day. And so at some point, I don't know, I had a cup of coffee with his assistant. And I just asked some really simple questions about, what it was like, kind of taking care of Ray. And because he was with him, to the best of my knowledge, I mean, not 24 hours a day, but, throughout his daily routine. And that fascinated me. The whole concept that one person would almost dedicate their life to another person, I found fascinating. And really enjoyed my chat with him. The brothers Johnson, they're very different personalities. Lewis Johnson on bass, unbelievable. George Johnson can be a little, and I don't know if Mr. Johnson is still alive or not. I kind of doubt it. Definitely way more of a partier and kind of beyond what we normally do in the studio. And kind of pushed the limits a little bit, but he and Quincy had a friendship that lasted way, way, way before I was part of the scene. So yeah, it was an odd, the guitar solo in that song. It was just a very strange night. Maybe not one of my favorite nights in the studio. Nobody got hurt, nobody got killed, nothing terrible, but just a level of partying that wasn't really, he was kind of partying on his own, and he kind of wanted everybody to join the party, and we were there to do a job. I mean, we were there to have fun, but I'll stop before I go too far. I will say one more thing about I'll Be Good to You, and I never told Quincy this story. When Bruce was mixing the album, it's hard to convey how long the days were. When Quincy works. And so we were pumping in 14, 16-hour days, day after day. And when we got to mixing, that number went up. We were sleeping in the mic closet, sleeping under the console, grabbing a shower whenever we could. And I don't want to say it was miserable, but it was long days. And there was one night in particular when it was at the very end, and Bruce had just mixed "I'll Be Good to You," and we mixed it to a digital tape machine called the Mitsubishi X86. And I've done a lot of tape editing. I'm pretty good at it, but digital tape editing is a little bit different. And Bruce mixed it, and it's one of the few songs on the album that has a fade out at the end of the song. And Bruce faded it, and everything worked fine. And Bruce left, and he said, "Braddy Daddy, cut that into the master tape that we're going to take to Bernie's." I said, "Okay." It's like 3 a.m, and I'm completely spent. And I played the song, and I got to the fade, and I stopped the machine, and I cut the tape. Cut it, put a piece of leader in, a little, kind of a little white spacer, and then I went back and listened to it, and the song fades out. I can still hear it. It fades out to the point where it starts, sinking into the threshold just a little bit, and then it stops. And there's the leader. I cut the freaking tape probably 2 seconds before the end of the song. And I was mortified. I thought, that's it. I'm going to have to learn how to be a lumberjack and move to Oregon because I'm going to be kicked out of the music industry tomorrow. So I went. I've told so few people this story, and now I'm telling it on a podcast. But I pieced it back together, and it worked. You couldn't hear the break, but you could see it. The tape's playing, and then this piece of splicing tape goes past. I've told so few people this story. So I did what any savvy assistant engineer would do. I made a copy. I made what's called a D-to-D, a digital-to-digital copy, and thankfully we had 2 Mitsubishi machines, and so I could make my cut copy to a new tape, and in theory it's a perfect copy, but in reality there's always teeny little things that can happen. But that's what we used. The version that you hear is a copy of the one that I cut. I felt terrible, and I suppose a better man would have admitted it. But I was tired, and I was young, and I was scared, and it wasn't that big a deal. It was to me. It was a big deal to me. But I cut it, and that original, I don't know where it is. It just disappeared. So if you listen to the fade out of "I'll Be Good to You" and crank it up really loud, hopefully the fade is absolutely perfect. And no one is the wiser, but now you know. The verb "to be." This was just before the album was released. Bobby McFerrin's song "Don't Worry, Be Happy." Everybody loved "Don't Worry, Be Happy." And that song was on the radio and on MTV all the time. And Quincy was friends with Bobby, and he wanted to do kind of his own version. So we sampled Quincy pounding his chest and making all these sounds and turned it into a song. Not my favorite song, but it's a fun. Go ahead and listen to it. Pop it in. The verb "to be," and the chorus is actually there's the introduction. Then the actual song is called "We Be Doing It," a cappella party, and I mean everybody is on this thing. I think Sarah Vaughan is kind of in the background, and Saida. And it's fun. The human bean band is what they called themselves, and it's very Quincy Jones. It's very well produced. Bruce did a great job mixing it. I don't know. Is it corny? Maybe a little bit, but it's a fun kind of a good track 6 kind of song. Then we pull out the big guns. Track 7, you get to Places You Find Love. We had a lot of guests that would come, both musicians and just friends of Quincy's, almost without fail. Bruce would stand up, put the guest behind the console, and look at me, Braddy Daddy, play the song, and I would play Places You Find Love, the most recent version of it. And it was thunderous, and Saida's soaring vocals. But then at whatever it is, I think it's verse 3, who steps in but Shaka Khan? Now, young Brad, I'm not going to say I had a crush on Shaka Khan. I mean, that would be completely inappropriate. But come on, I grew up on Rufus, and Tell Me Something Good. and I'd, even though, I did grow up on a lot of Frampton and Van Halen and AC/DC, but man, I loved funk. And to be in the room with Shaka Khan, that dynamo of energy, that beautiful woman. So she and Saida sang it the same night. And Saida sang first and just killed it. And imagine Saida. She's very young. And all of a sudden, she is running with the big dogs. And I'm sure she's talked about this. She's got her own podcast. But she's got to compete with Saida, with Shaka Khan. You talk about the big sword coming out. And so here comes Shaka. And Shaka goes out and does hers. And with the lights are really low in the studio. It's a big control room, Westlake Studio D. It's a big control room. And when people are going to sing, it just seems like there's a lot more people in the control room. And so pretty sure that Glenn Ballard was there. Cliff might have been there. Cliff Magnus, Ian Prince, Rod Temperton, Bruce, me, Quincy, and Saida. And Shaka goes out there and just kills it. And I can still remember where I was sitting. And it's one of those moments in time where you're like, there's just nowhere else I would rather be right now than right here. I'm listening to Shaka Khan sing Places You Find Love, full throttle. And then her and Saida, it's almost like a sword fight. It's like these two beautiful women just duking it out with their voices. And Shaka's performance was amazing. It was just amazing. And she came in, I've got to be careful not to yell into the microphone too hard. Saida stood up. Shaka came in with a huge, beautiful smile. And Saida stands up and she's just like, "Bitch, you bitch." And she's yelling at her and screaming and laughing. And the whole room was just electric. And it's a moment in time I'll never forget. And to this day, and I'm repeating myself now, but to this day, I tell young recording students and producers, please, ease up on the beats just a little bit and listen to a song like Places You Find Love with dynamic range and vocals and vocal prowess and musicianship. Good grief, the guitars in that song, the arrangement. I was listening to it. I probably listened to it like 5 times in my car the other day, and I was hearing things that I hadn't really thought about in decades. The layering and just Quincy Jones. It's Quincy Jones rolling up his sleeves, and not to be disrespectful to Barbra Streisand at all, but it's almost embarrassing. Quincy's version, when he decided, okay, let's get serious about this song, it kind of puts Barbara's to shame. But Barbara's a different feel. So Quincy's arrangement on Quincy's album probably wouldn't have worked for Barbara because they're just two very different styles. So, but what do I know? All right. Jazz corner of the word. Big Daddy Kane, Cool Mo D. Again, it's just a short little rap, 2 minutes, 54 seconds. Go ahead and check it out. Take a few seconds. I need another sip because my throat's getting a little tired. So I believe it was Michael Boddicker that really helped us kind of dropping in all those sounds, the thing with, Pee Wee Marquette and everything. So that was a whole, again, there wasn't Pro Tools at the time. Now these guys had samplers. So someone like Michael Boddicker, he could fly on a sampler a lot faster than we could on tape. So this was the early days of really dropping in all those sounds. And so between, Quincy placing them, Boddicker kind of driving the ship, and then Bruce making it sound amazing. That's what you get with Jazz Corner of the World. Then you get into Birdland. Good grief. There were so many musicians. George Benson, Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie. I mean, these are names that I'd heard when I was young, and here I was in the same room with them, shaking hands with them and setting up microphones. And here's how it would work. Every night, Quincy would leave the studio. He called me Braddy Daddy. And he'd be like, Braddy Daddy, Ray's coming in tomorrow. Be ready. Well, what does that mean? It means Ray Charles is coming in tomorrow. And I'm supposed to... Now, of course, Bruce is going to be there, but it got to be a routine of Braddy Daddy, Miles is coming in tomorrow. So I've told this story a lot, and it's a little bit embarrassing, but life is too short to not tell the embarrassing stuff. Miles Davis. I didn't grow up, in a jazz home. I grew up, my mom is a very accomplished musician, but it was more gospel and disco and not so much jazz. So Miles Davis was just a name of a famous person to me. And I'm embarrassed to say that, but it's just true. So when Quincy told me Miles Davis is coming in tomorrow, he said, Miles is coming in tomorrow. It's like 2 a.m. And when you've been up night after night after night, and you just can't think that clearly, and there's no internet, there's no way to check stuff at 2 a.m. You can't go to the public library. So I thought Miles was a pianist. I thought he played the piano. So I pulled out the Yamaha in Studio D. I think we had a Yamaha 9-foot grand, beautiful piano, and I pull it out. And I set the microphones up on it, Bruce's 414s, and had the headphones ready, and it just looked great. Took me like an hour to get it all set up. And I still remember, I don't know if Ben Carr is still active in the industry, but Ben was one of our techs in the tech shop. And we had a tech there all night long, or at least while there was a session going on. And so I was young and cocky and stupid, and I went into the tech shop after I set up the piano, and I was just trying to be cool. I was trying to be a know-it-all. And I told Ben, I said, Miles Davis coming in tomorrow, so I've got Bruce's 414s, all set up on the piano, and, it's going to be a really fun day with with Miles Davis. And Ben might have been soldering something, and he may have dropped his soldering iron. And he looked at me, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, Brad, you're a complete idiot. Miles Davis is not a pianist. He's one of the premier trumpet players on the planet. So if I were you, I would put the piano away and get ready for trumpet. And I am, Ben, if if you are still around anywhere on the planet, thank you. Thank you, because you made a very young guy not look like a bigger idiot than he already was. So I was able to put those mics away and kind of save some bit of dignity. And here the next day, Miles showed up, and it was like a cartoon. I mean, this person that was clearly talented and wealthy and in a whole different orbit than I am. And he had the striped suit on, and he had the car with, like a 50-foot hood. I don't know if he had a driver. I don't know. Everything about it was surreal. He came in, and he had that gravelly voice, Quincy, and I'm sure they had nicknames for each other, and they hugged each other, and there was just decades of love and respect, and it was very deep. It was very powerful. And I got the privilege of having, a brief introduction. I didn't have a cup of coffee with Miles Davis. I wish I could say that I did. but it was just a moment in time. And he went out and he sat and he played. Dizzy had already played. I think we recorded Dizzy a few days earlier. And so Miles had to go out and and listen to the track, or he listened to the track in the control room with us. And he's like, I'm not going to use the colorful language that Mile used, but he's like, blankety blank Dizzy, took all the blankety blank, best spots. And now I got to fill in the holes. And he was just such a pro, and it was so much fun. And Quincy was just on cloud nine. And I was too. I just didn't have the depth of appreciation that Quincy did. I didn't have the mileage that Quincy did. So to have Dizzy and Miles play on that song, and then Joe Zawinul from Weather Report. Good grief! Again, I was so young and I didn't know all the history and the background that these guys had. And then Sarah Vaughan and Ella Fitzgerald. We were some of the last, I believe we were the last ones to record both of them. We were the last ones to record a lot of these guys. Quincy timed this record at the best time possible because they were all getting old. And we captured some of those final performances. Bruce captured them and Quincy directed them. And I've played Birdland hundreds of times, and I never get tired of it. It's the layers and the colors in there, and the vocals, and Sarah, and little old lady, Sarah Vaughan. I'm helping her out to the mic, and it's like like helping my grandma, like helping my great grandma. And Ella Fitzgerald. I mean, stop. I mean, who gets to do that? So amazing. Listen to Birdland like 40 times. Just stop the podcast right now and play Birdland over and over again until you've got it completely memorized. No, I'm kidding. Well, do you. Do whatever you want to do. Cut 10, Setembro, the Brazilian wedding song. What a beautiful song. It was written by Ivan Lins, and I'm going to mess up his name, but Gilson. Or wait, am I doing this right? No. Those were the writers. Ivan Lins and Gilson Peranzada. And then Quincy and Greg Fillinganes did the rhythm arrangement. But I mean, everybody was involved in this. It was such again, I think Sarah Vaughan pops in about 2/3 of the way through the song. It's just a beautiful piece of music. Again, Quincy Jones 101, Bruce Swedien, amazing mix on it. And it's just beautiful. A really, really pretty song. One Man Woman, another Saida Garrett. Quincy was setting the stage for Saida. And I thought it was a great pop song. Ian Prince wrote it. Harriet Roberts, forgive me, I don't know. I don't remember Harriet. But just a fun, poppy, dancey, kind of cool Saida song. And keep in mind, right after this, I think Saida had already done her solo album. She did her solo album right after the Bad album. And then she was coming in. It was all kind of happening around the same time. But I think she may have already finished her solo album by the time she did this. So One Man Woman. Then we're going to bring Tevin Campbell back in with Tomorrow. Now it's interesting. This was, the music is by George Johnson, Lewis Johnson, lyrics by Saida Garrett. Gorgeous song. Very, very much in the vein of a Michael Jackson. There's always kind of that, why didn't Michael participate in this album? And I believe he was on tour, and there may have been more to it than that. I don't know. You can read whatever you want to read or speculate. But Quincy was really, Quincy found Tevin. I don't know how he found Tevin, but Tevin came in I'm repeating myself, but just a young, sweet kid. And he would just open his mouth and this beautiful music would just come pouring out. I think he was I'm gonna mess this up, but I want to say he was from, is it Wax Wax something, a town called Wax something in Texas. And Quincy would just keep yelling that town name. Bring me some wax. I don't want to mispronounce it, so I feel kind of stupid right now. But Quincy was just kept yelling that town name, and his mom was there, and Tevin was laughing, and it was just beautiful. The whole thing. We had the kids choir on that. We may have had the Andre Crouch choir, but definitely had a kids choir on there, and it was just very much an MJ kind of song, and but a young MJ kind of song, not the kind of song that Michael would have done on the Bad album, but what a beautiful song. Prelude to the Garden. Oh my goodness, Secret Garden. So Prelude to the Garden is just about 55 seconds. It's a really pretty synth string arrangement. And then you get into Secret Garden. Oh, wow. This is, we're getting into some PG-13 territory here. Sweet Seduction Suite, written by Quincy Jones, Rod Temperton, Saida Garrett, and El DeBarge. And then you've got vocals by everybody on the planet. It's a beautiful song. It's not subtle at all, but it's also not raunchy. It's very much a seductive song, if you will. And Quincy was a very seductive guy, and so the vocals are just spot on. And again, I mean, Al B. Sure, and you go down this list of people that performed on this record: George Benson, Gerald Albright, Tevin, Andre Crouch, Miles, El DeBarge, George Duke, Sheila E. popped in, Nathan East, Dizzy, James Gilstrap, Howard Hewitt, Herbie Hancock, Jennifer Holliday, Ice-T, Patty Howard, James Ingram, of course, is on Secret Garden. You've got Shaka, Michael Landau, Steve Lukather played on Secret Garden, Luther Vandross. It just went on and on and on. There's something I remember. There's two things I remember about Secret Garden, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but Quincy talked about gang violence and kind of the trouble, kids that get themselves into a lot of trouble. And again, forgive me, because I have core beliefs that don't always agree with, when I quote something. But he basically said, I'd rather have young kids, sleeping together than killing each other. I mean, the record is very violence free. It's not a record of, go out and shoot people and all that. At Quincy's, Quincy really did. Some of these songs are very sensual. Secret Garden is very sensual. There's no getting around it. The other memory, and it's a very sweet memory, and I don't think I've told many people this at all, but Bruce Swedien was my dear friend, and Bruce was Michael's engineer for years and years and years, and did just an amazing job on this record. And he was married to B. He was married to his wife B for decades. And we just lost Bruce a few years ago. And they were very much in love. And they were a very sweet couple. Bruce was a great big Minnesota Swede. B was a much, tiny little Minnesota Swedish blonde. And at the late, we finished mixing Secret Garden. And it was just me and Bruce and B. Just the three of us. And the two of them started to dance. They ignored me, and I did the best I could to not ignore them, but give them their space. And it was just this beautiful, slow dance between two wonderful people, very much in love. And when I listen to Secret Garden, I see the two of them dance. And it was beautiful, and it was sweet, and it was tender. So that's Quincy Jones back on the block. I'm almost positive Bruce won a Grammy. Forgive me for stammering here. 7 Grammy Awards, earned every single one. Best Instrumental Arrangement, Best Jazz Fusion. Bruce won Best Engineer. Good for you, Bruce. Both Ray and Shaka won Best R&B Performance. Best Rap Performance went to Kool Mo D and Big Daddy Kane, Ice-T, and Melly Mel, and QD3. It was about a year that we were in the studio, and it was such an irreplaceable experience. And if you kind of wish you could time travel and go back. Man, I wish I could go back. With a few decades of experience now, and just be in the room again with Miles and Dizzy and Ray and Sarah and Ella, and obviously Quincy and Bruce. But I'm grateful to have been there, and it was talk about being at the right place at the right time. So do yourself a favor. In fact, I'm going to give you 2 favors. Do yourself a favor. Listen to Back on the Block a few times, and but introduce somebody else to it. If you know somebody that's studying piano or wants to learn engineering or just loves music, and maybe they're kind of in the rut of, everything has to be trap or hip hop, and I'm not, whatever, don't judge me, but just tell them, hey, look, take a couple hours and listen to Back on the Block. Just open your mind up to something that's pretty spectacular, because it's bite size. You're getting Quincy's musical career, decades of Quincy Jones in one CD package or one Spotify album. And that's the other thing, is try and listen to it in order. We took so much care into sequencing these records, which song preceded which song. So I think it tells a beautiful story. And I think ending up on Secret Garden, it starts you out with Back on the Block and ends you on Secret Garden. Pretty powerful. So introduced somebody to Back on the Block, and tell them this is really something that you need to experience. So that's my spiel. I thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, subscribe, tell your friends. It's good to be back. No pun intended. We've been a little sporadic with our podcasts. I get so busy with other projects, but we're going to try to jump back into this on a more regular basis because I really enjoy it. So I appreciate you guys. God bless. I will talk to you soon. Have a great week, and come back and hang out in the studio with us sometime. Take care. In the Studio, the podcast is produced by Maddie Sundberg. Theme music performed by Buddy Nuanez. Artwork by Andy Healy. Studio electronics provided by Golden Age Project, and studio acoustics provided by Acoustic Sciences Corporation. My name is Brad Sundberg. Thanks so much for hanging out with us in the studio.